Mr. N.S. Madhavan, absolute pleasure. It is a great honor for me to share the stage and speak to you about food as someone who is interested in the science of food. You cannot think about science without understanding culture and history and your stories and your novels, and food plays a very central role almost. That I always, my grandmother used to point out that women do all the cooking in the kitchen, men do the talking. So like that, two men are going to be talking about food yet again. But I want to maybe get your thoughts on uniquely how you use food as a metaphor for many things about character development, about the historical context, class structures, deprivation, economic crisis, and social and religious divisions in all of your stories. So maybe it would be good to start with some of these, how you think about food as a central character, like a hero or a villain in your stories.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure for me to share a stage with Krish Ashok. I've been a huge fan of his, watched almost all his YouTube videos, and also his book, which he kindly sent me, but much before that, yeah, I had read it. Also, I have very generously stolen ideas from his book. And so it has improved my biryani very much when I started putting the meat pieces in salt, in brine. As you know, secret of biryani is the juiciness of the mutton. So
yes,
he started with it. Then he also validated some of my ideas about using modern equipment for cooking, like with great cost. I acquired an Instapot from London.
Oh yes.
Now I am living on it. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And I thank this festival to bringing us together. Well, as you know, the cooking is mostly female domain. And I grew up in a family where women help and women used to cook. We also had a custom, a very bad custom in those days, that certain periods of the month, women are not allowed inside the kitchen. So during those periods, me being the eldest boy, my mother and grandmother used to send instruction to whoever is available in the kitchen to how to cook or what to look for. So this bad tradition probably led to a great familiarity with kitchen from a very young age. So naturally then I had to live away from Kerala for a long time. So to eat nostalgia food, most of the times I had to cook it myself. Then now I am back from North India, so to eat dal makhani or aloo paratha, I had to make it myself. So it's a kind of a quirk of my life that I turned out to be so. Food, if you look at the history of food in Kerala, it's very interesting and there are many paradoxes. To begin with, when did rice come to Kerala? One of the early writings on Kerala by Madhavan, a Chinese travel, that's the first written travelogue about Kerala in the 13th century mentions that people eat rice in Kerala. He also mentioned there are two things missing in Kerala, duck and asses, donkeys. So now we have plenty of it, so there is no problem. So, but at that time, rice was eaten by only the upper
Yes.
elites of the society. So even the elites of the society, even the poor among the Savarnas or the upper caste, and all the upper caste did not eat rice. The lower caste were prohibited from eating rice.
Right.
So there is, so they went for millets, basically chama, then
Thinai, Sama.
Thinai,
Yeah,
chama,
yeah.
and kuvara. Kuvara is arrowroot, and mulanella, that is the seeds of bamboo.
Yes.
Things changed probably around 1840, that period, because 1839 Kerala experienced a great earthquake.
Yeah.
And 43 there was a big flood. 1846 there was another flood. This led to great food famine, even for the upper caste. They were also deprived of rice. So as early as 150 or 150 years ago, rice was imported to Kerala from Bengal. So when the rice distribution came to the hand of government of Travancore, probably everybody started having access to it.
Yes.
I mean, this is probably one of the reasons. The another popular food of Kerala, tapioca, it came as late as 1880. There was a famine then also. So between 1880 and 1885, the then king of Travancore, Vishagam Tirunal, got tapioca not directly from Brazil but via Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And the food really caught on.
Yeah.
In less than a century, little more than a century, it became
A staple, yeah.
a staple food of Malayali.
Yes.
So these are some of the things. And I had used, my novel has about 7 or 8 recipes. My short story, one of my short story has a recipe on fish moldy, mostly to establish time, because my novel has a big recipe of the biryani made in early 50s.
Right.
So all the measurements were of that period.
Yes.
Seers
Seers and yeah, correct. Yes.
So then Manorama asked me to convert it into modern
To metric units.
to make it into metric and start
Yes.
changing it. So food mainly, then there is a politics of food.
Yes.
My last short story was clearly about this politics of food. It's about a man carrying a piece of his internal organ for biopsy. So it was mistaken to be beef in one of the North Indian villages, and he was lynched to death. I mean, that's Palu Piriyum Kalam,
Yeah.
how the milk splat. That's the last story I wrote. So, well, food has great politics. Now in Kerala, we have more or less egalitarian menu.
Right.
And even the subaltern menu, like what is eaten in the toddy shop,
Yes.
has now come to the table with great fanfare. It's like
Yes.
pizza effect, There is this great thinker, Agehananda Saraswati, in his autobiography, he coins the word pizza effect, because pizza is one of the food of the Italians, which was a very sada kind of food, but it was taken to US by Italian immigrants
Yes.
and it came
Came
back.
back, yes.
So that's what is called. So something like a pizza effect is happening to all the
Oh yes. For the subaltern food is particularly, yes.
all the subaltern cooking. And if you travel to Wayanad, you'll find a lot of boards saying Molayari Payasam, you know,
Yes.
the lowest of low cereal.
Correct. Yes.
It's available. So this is one mystery about Kerala is how the beef became popular.
Yeah.
It's a big mystery because both Travancore and Cochin, they were both Hindu countries. Travancore was actually ruled by a god. The king was only his representative. Kochi was even more conservative Hindu country.
True. True.
So cow slaughter was banned throughout till independence. Actually, there is a historical record saying that when Vasco da Gama came to Kochi for the first time in 1505, the first agreement he signed with the king of Kochi was he will not eat beef in the ship.
Ah.
So 2 days after the agreement, 3 Christians, it is written in the historical document, approached Vasco da Gama and asked him whether he needs, because the Christians of Kerala were Catholics and Vasco da Gama himself was a Catholic. So it's a kind of kinship gesture.
Yes. Yes.
Vasco da Gama, to his credit, reported the matter to the king, and these 3 people were impaled.
Wow.
And then we had another king of Cochin, Shaktan Dambiran. He was the most, Shaktan means powerful. His name will be Ramavarma or something, because almost all the Cochin kings are called Ramavarma. So Shaktan Dambiran's biography actually lists the killings and executions he had carried out on people, butchery. Paradoxically, at the same time, the records of the Kerala ports show that there was a lot of export of leather from Kerala. So it would have been an on and off affair. You know, some
Yes.
kings were strict, some were
Yeah.
lenient. But anyway, 1947, when the independence came, all the statutes on beef were not renewed probably. We had completely forgotten about it. And while growing up, in Kochi, there was only one restaurant that was selling beef, and we all used to go to that. It was opposite KADHA Theatre, a restaurant called Four Aces. It is still there. Then probably in the 70s, the price of mutton shot up. So people wanted cheaper proteins,
Right.
and mutton became. Beef became. Now in Kochi, you don't get mutton.
Yes.
You get only beef.
Correct. Yes. It's
It's
cheaper now.
happening all over Kerala. Second Kerala mystery is what you call the Malabar Parota. Malabar Parota was not there till about 80 years ago. Something.
Yes, that is true. Yes.
So what happened was, before the Dubai expedition from Kerala started, much before that, Malayalis went from Kerala to Ceylon, Sri Lanka, to work in tea gardens.
Yes.
And, they brought back this parota. So in 1950s and 60s, in Ernakulam, in Kochi, probably all over Kerala, these parotas were sold as Ceylon parotas.
Ceylon parota. Jaffna parota. Yes.
Jaffna parota,
Yes.
yeah. And now it's all over the world. It is
It's Malabar parota. Yes.
Malabar parota. And these are the 2.
Interesting. So on the one of the interesting things I had explored from the point of view of what people in different parts of India eat and why, and beyond looking at history, to also see whether there is, because one very common thing people ignore in why people eat what they eat is geography. So if you take a longer if you look at India's terrain, in general, you find that the south and the east are predominantly meat and seafood eating and have been for the longest amount of time. Most of India's vegetarians are in the north and west. And there are largely two factors. One is that if you look at a topographical map of India, the north and the west is complete flat river plains, extremely fertile, both the Indus and the Ganga and that entire system. No mountain in sight, completely flat, large pastures for cattle and so on. The moment you get to the Deccan Plateau and so on, land is completely uneven. You don't have a history of cattle, large cattle population. And not only that, over time, if you have large pastures, combined with the fact that 2000 years ago or 4000 years ago, the people who came from the Central Asian and mixed with the Indian population introduced a gene mutation where they were able to digest milk well into adults. So today, a person in Punjab or Haryana, 80-year-old man, can drink 2 liters of milk a day without any problem. We cannot. We'll have like diarrhea, right? So, therefore also meant that it is possible for them to get all their animal protein. We all need, only vegetarian you cannot get enough animal protein, the amino acids. They get everything from milk, from paneer, from yogurt, from all of these things. So it is possible to support a vegetarian culture, which then you have Jainism and the effect of Buddhism and Brahminical Hinduism and all of that then therefore meant the elites in society. Now about 30% of the population is vegetarian, right? So, and in fact in places like Rajasthan, Gujarat, it is close to 50-60% of the population is vegetarian. But so, yes. And in fact, one additional thing I want to, so this is therefore, historically if you see any animal you are growing, you are going to eat for meat. It is just natural in agricultural societies. And that has just continued to be true. And you obviously had orthodox influences, you had Adi Shankara, you had all of that imposed, kind of moved people, elites in society away from beef and away from meat in general. But your mystery, it is interesting, is that why beef consumption is more universal in Kerala. Even in Tamil Nadu, it is very common amongst Dalit communities and non-Hindu communities. Dalit communities absolutely eat beef. Chennai is one of the best places to get beef biryani and many of the beef curries and so on. So that is actually quite interesting. So your second, I think, mystery that you spoke about, Selu and Parota, I have an interesting other anecdote to add, which is that I had spoken about this. During World War, around the 1940s, right, early 1940s, there was a rice shortage in all of South India. Britain used to import from Burma, right? And the Japanese occupied Burma, and then that also stopped. So they were desperate to convince South Indians to consume more wheat, because wheat they can source, they can get from North India, they can get from Bombay and all that. And so they tried many things. So rava was introduced at that time. So instead of the person who founded MTR invented rava idli. Then upma became a replacement for pongal. And one of the things I read was that they set up bakeries for the first time in Calicut. And to introduce the idea of bread-based, wheat-based products, like bread, like buns, cream bun, that bun, and it was around that time when the laborers from, as you said, from Jaffna, they bought the Jaffna parota that first got introduced to Tuticorin, and then it became Thuthukudi parota, and then from there it became the Malabar parota for now, which Calicut is really, really famous. So one of the things that I wanted to really dig deep into is this broader idea, and I, as a literary person, I want to hear your thoughts. Is that we always think food is something that unites people, right? We all sit around, we eat together, we cook and eat together. And in India, it always, so in Western writing, food is something that brings people together. So the moment you cook a feast, everyone is eating, right? There is a celebration at the end of this thing, there is a feast, right? And everyone eats, right? Everyone, regardless of class, when the king is throwing a feast, they all come and eat the same thing and so on. But I feel that's not the case in India, because I think in India, every caste, every community, every religion, every subcaste, subcommunity, their identity is based on what they don't eat or what they eat. More usually than not, what they don't eat. So it is difficult for a Jain person to have, Orthodox Jain person to have food in anybody else's home, because onion will be there, garlic will be there. Vegetarian person to have food in anyone else's home, because not only do we, it is not just a matter that they cook something that I don't eat, it is also associated with purity. It is associated with high and low, which is somehow, although yes, there is, even in Europe, there is poor people's food and rich people's food, but it's not the same thing here where, for example, I can give you an example in Tamil Nadu, there are some spices, combinations that Brahmins will eat and some spice combinations they will not eat. It is not just about veg, non-veg. Some of the Orthodox people in my family, for example, coriander is okay, but fennel is not okay. Sombu is not okay. That is seen as being used only for non-veg. Cinnamon, black cardamom, sombu, these are all considered non-veg spices, although they're all plants, right? So I want to hear, in your thoughts, have you seen, do you see a similar pattern in Kerala society, or do you think there is a little bit more egalitarian? How do you see food dividing as well as uniting?
Well, I'll start with, I spend a lot of time in Bihar.
Yeah.
So Bihar, when people invite me, they had a problem. They don't know my caste. Since I didn't come through the reservation system, they think I'm kind of upper caste, but they have no idea which subcaste or anything. So throughout in my Bihar stay, if I'm invited to a house, to an Orthodox house, I was never served rice. It was always puri. Because rice is only given to equivalents.
Yes.
I didn't know it till I came back from, I asked why people are, I'm not crazy about puri, why people are feeding me puri, but this was the reason. So
Yes.
in Kerala, I think such discrimination don't exist now, but it used to be in a very big manner. When I was growing up, all kinds of restrictions were there. It was, Jain tradition in my father's ancestral house. It was a modern house. My mother's parents came from abroad, so it was a modern house. So we all used to stay with our mother's house then. But in my father's house, there was no uli, no onion was used, no garlic was used. It was a strict set of do's and don'ts. But now I think that has disappeared, at least socially. Interestingly, there is a story from the history of Kerala, Sri Narayana Guru.
Yes.
Sri Narayana Guru wanted to modernize his community, Iravas. So one of the first things he did was, the Irava marriages, the main items were fish curry and meat curry.
Yes.
And so Guru felt that it's a very smelly affair. So he consistently campaigned for sambar, for vegetarian marriage sadhyas.
Yes.
So this is a kind of Sanskritization move, but so in 1914, in Midavadi was the journal of SNDP, Sri Narayana Guru Paripalana Sangam. Somebody wrote an article on how should an ideal, food should be. It should begin with the lentil, then you should have something to pour. That was the template for sadhya. The sadhya came to Kerala probably after this article because it went, to use a modern term, it went viral, this article. So sadhya is only 107 years old.
Wow, yes.
Yeah. And I also had an interesting experience during my childhood because one of my father's friend was a Cochin Jew, Jewish
Yes.
You know,
Yes, yes.
those white Jews
Yes.
from...
European Jews,
yeah.
yes.
He had a fishing boat. He used to rent it out. So custom is that a part of the catch goes to the owner. So if it is chimney, if it is any shellfish, he used to send it to us because it's not,
not kosher, yes.
It's not for... So we also benefited from this food
Exactly.
prohibitions.
Food taboos, yes.
Another thought I have about what you said about milk. You know, Kerala doesn't have sweets.
Yes.
A total lack of sweet culture in Kerala. What we have, payasams, mostly milk is not used, but coconut milk.
Coconut milk, yes.
It's a great mystery once again, because the same Portuguese stayed for a shorter duration in Bengal and
Yes.
taught Bengalis how to make cheese.
Chena, yeah, just cheese,
Chena.
yes. Yeah.
And the whole treasury of sweets came from Bengal. So probably this lacto intolerance.
Yes. No, actually, yeah. So Bengalis are also reasonably lactose intolerant. But interesting is, the process of making chena removes most of the lactose.
Oh, okay.
So that is why it is, because you remove the lactose, it goes with the whey.
I know.
So only they are getting the fat and the protein, yes.
And I read a very interesting book. I forgot its name. It argues that, very famous book. It argues that the renovations in cooking in Kerala came through Christians and Muslims, because the Hindu community was so sharply divided
By caste.
and so aloof from to accept any of this outside this thing. So one of the great benefactors of this innovations or this introduction of new recipes were the Chettiars
Yes.
of Cholamandalam. Yeah.
Yes.
So one interesting story, again I read it in this book. The Dutch brought their cake making machine,
Yes.
and we used, the Chettiars used oil in it and started frying paniyarams.
Yes.
It came to Kerala and we started frying appam, unniyappam and
Yes. Yes.
neyyapam.
It is it is actually interesting. Originally, it is a Danish or a Nordic. They actually fry those meatball things, and it became adapted for paniyaram. Yeah, it's quite a fascinating story. Yeah. So in fact, the sweet culture, particularly, is interesting given that we now it is now famous for payasams. But I think the lactose intolerance, but because payasam requires milk, and that is again, people will have trouble digesting, and so on. One fascinating thing I've always found about food here is the ecosystem of public eating places, right? Most people don't recognize that India did not have restaurants prior to the Udupi category of restaurants, etc. Right? Because as you said, people would not eat food outside their home. You don't know who it is cooked by. And so when the Udupi temple priests who used to cook suddenly didn't have jobs because the temple patronage went away, the British did not patronize, and all the British government revenue jobs were taken by Tamil Brahmins. So they were left out. So they started getting into the catering and food business. So that is how the Shetty Kamat, that entire ecosystem of restaurants. And there's a photo of my father in the 1960s standing in Tirunelveli. And there's a board that it says Gomati Vilas Brahmin's Hotel. So all hotels used to have the word Brahmin's Hotel to indicate that the chef was Brahmin as a way of indicating. And then somehow, when it became unacceptable to use that word, it became pure veg. So the pure, high class. So you see, high class pure vegetarian. So it is quite fascinating to see how as social development also happened in the rest of India, these habits have changed. And in a sense, Kerala has had the fortune of going through these changes some 40, 50 years before the rest of India. Like you said, South Indians don't use a surname. Okay? So my name, Krish is my father's name, Ashok is my name. Right? So North Indians are like, what is the surname? Right? I can't detect what caste you are. Right? So there is Gupta, Banerjee, that all of that indicate caste. So it is interesting because now what happens is that South Indians who went and settled in Bombay and Calcutta, apparently till the 1960s and 70s, the birth registration, they would not allow you to use your father's name in the surname. It had to be a caste name. So apparently that is why South Indians who were born in Bombay are forced to have names like Iyer, Pillai, Nair, because no other choice. They can't keep only father's name and their name, mother's name. See, my wife's name is Vijayalakshmi Smita. Vijayalakshmi is her mother's name, Smita is her name. So, and her mother's name is Parvati Vijayalakshmi. So these naming formats, every time she goes to a government office, is like, wait, where is the father's name? Where is the surname? So it is all. So India is so diverse, and I particularly want you to kind of talk about the public eating, right? The idea of people coming together, eating together in a restaurant, not looking at caste, community, religion, right? And even sometimes, even crossing the religious boundaries in terms of Hindus eating beef and others eating other things, and being open to trying out. Right? So Calicut, for example, seems to have more restaurants than many cities in India. It's almost as if people don't cook at home. I think everybody just goes outside and eats, right? So I wanted to talk about what you see as the public eating culture in Kerala.
Well, one of the historical reasons Kerala was scarce in food till the Green Revolution came. Actually, O.V. Vijayan, one of our famous writer and a cartoonist, had drawn a cartoon in 1960 when the rationing in Kerala was reduced to 6 ounces per person. So from the moon, somebody is saying that, look there is a place where people live on 6 ounces of grain. And a failed innovation in Kerala was in 1959, when the government did not have rice to give through the ration shops. So they introduced macaroni.
Yes.
Macaroni can come in any shape.
Yes.
So this macaroni came in the shape of grains.
Rice.
And it was one of the reasons.
So made from tapioca, right? Was it made from tapioca or tapioca starch?
No,
Wheat. Oh, wheat. Okay.
Tapioca, probably sago.
Sago. Yes, sago. Yes.
So that was, one of the points. Again, the communist government there, that in 1959, macaroni. So EMS, the chief minister, was known as macaroni, Bhagavan macaroni. So that is a side story. The eating culture in Kerala, I think, must go back to about one and a half centuries back. And it's probably it's a small tea shop that came. Well, again, by the immigrants or people who are come back from the army, ex-military men. They had nothing to do, so they started a tea shop. And also it has to do with the Malayalis' eating habit then. They used to have one early meal, very early meal, breakfast meal, and a supper. And they used to work in the field. So it was not possible for them to cook if alternate food is available in an eating place. Probably that's how it came. One of our writers, S.K. Patakad, has a detailed description of how these tea shops and makanis came out in the Kerala villages. So, in a place which was totally caste bound, worst in the country, that Swami Vivekananda, when he visited Kerala, called it a madhouse, a lunatic asylum, because we had strict caste restrictions. Between a Pulaya and a Nair should be 32 feet, and between them. Wow. And, well, for some people it was just the drishti, If you see the vision, he is punished. So that kind of a very restricted caste society, these tea shops probably brought a revolution in the late 19th century because people had no problem in sitting there and eating and then go to work. And then the taste caught on. Probably that could be the reason. Nowhere in India, I've been in Bihar, except the dhabas which came up because of the traffic.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't find any chai kadas in Bihar or UP.
It is uniquely very much a Kerala and South Tamil
Kerala,
Nadu.
probably
Yeah.
I'm told Sri Lanka also.
Sri Lanka also, yes.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. I think, okay, so before we get to audience questions, I want to ask you, what is your favorite Indian dish? One, what is your favorite dish from Kerala? And what is your favorite dish that is not from Kerala?
My favorite dish from Kerala, no guesses, biryani. So,
Any specific biryani, or are people very fiercely protective? Calicut biryani
yeah,
versus
it's a
Talaseri
calicut biryani. I mean, I like calicut biryani so much that I can't now eat any other biryani because of the rice size. I
Yes.
can't.
The big one is like,
I can't eat that long grain rice, but calicut biryani is my favorite. Outside of Kerala, I love dal makhani.
sorry?
Dal makhani.
Dal makhani.
Yeah.
And there's a very interesting story about dal makhani itself, which is that, it's called makhani. People assume it's because you cook the dal and you add lots of butter and cream. That's why they call it dal makhani. But if you speak to a Punjabi farmer or from the villages where they grow the black urad dal, he will tell you that's not why. Because the black dal has a special property, the full whole black urad. If you cook it in a pressure cooker, you won't get this. But if you cook it on an open pot at low heat overnight, what they used to do is they'll put it in the tandoor where this heat is still there. They will put the dal and the next day morning they will use. Right? So it's slow cook. When it is slow cooked, the dal releases a very thick, creamy, like a substance, almost like a mucilage, right? Like what you get from a vendaka bindi. And that makes the dal naturally creamy. So when they actually say dal makhani, it is because the use of that dal naturally makes it makhani. You don't have to add, but restaurants do it. So you should go to a Punjabi village. That is what they call dal makhani. So that was lovely chatting with you. I think so many insightful learnings about the culture of food from this part of the world. I would love for people in the audience to also have an opportunity to ask him some questions. Yes.
Sir, you said the outside eating habit of Kerala came from, as their agriculture people, they don't get enough time to cook at home. But is that the case? How this culture is dominated or restricted by the male community here? Actually, in the people, both the male and female community went for working in agriculture field. So, but these mechanisms are always restricted to male community only. Is that the case? How it happened?
Don't have an answer for that because my experience with tea shop is from the southern part of Kerala, in Kuttanad and in Travancore, Kochi side, both men and women. That's why I said agricultural labor instead of...
Right, yeah.
Both men and women, they have the morning 2 poots and some kadla and they start working. This must have happened till 1970s. So now probably mechanization of agriculture and things like that
Right.
may not be happening, but I don't know what mechanics are.
So I think the one interesting thing is that what we've normally observed, right? There is often more gender egalitarianism amongst the subaltern when their primary this thing is labor, very oriented, right? And if anything, sometimes it's opposite, right? There is, in fact, reverse dowry, right? In some communities, the dowry is paid to the daughter's father and all of that. But as mechanization happened, what we've observed in almost all of India is that once mechanization and economic thing goes up, in fact, the first thing is that becomes a casualty is women's rights. Because then people believe, now I have enough money and space to follow my tradition. And so people say, no, I don't want my wife to work. I can afford to keep her at home. And then it changes again once education levels go up and a few more generations. It's a very common pattern. I'm sure it probably went through, Kerala also went through a similar, yes.
Hello. I have a long-standing grouse that alcoholic beverages are not considered as part of gastronomical. So, I mean, I used to watch this Thirsty Traveler program, and this guy used to go to countries and say, okay, this is a drink of this place, and this is how it is used in the cuisines, etc. But what we've seen here is very little of that. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is people using karla for fermentation for batter, making appams. Is there anything else that we can revive and bring mainstream?
Oh, yes. There is a whole chapter on alcohol in his book by it.
Thank you. No, but I think it would be interesting for you to,
Yeah, so, yes, I mean, there is a theory which I don't know. There's no historical document, but there is a theory saying that Dutch probably brought fermentation into the cooking in this side, but idlis are much older than that.
much older. Dosa idlis are much older, yes.
So appam probably came through the Dutch influence. It's all over India. Alcohol is very rarely used in. The main reason probably that we don't have the right kind of alcohol. We have the triple cooked or triple distilled spirits, or a very short life toddy, palm toddy or coconut. So that could be, and toddy in appam is used not as alcohol, as a fermenting agent.
Yeah, the yeast, yes.
Yeah. So that could be the reason, whereas Europeans had options. It's a controversy about agriculture. You must be knowing that. Why did agriculture happen? So one school says that it's for making food. Other school says that it's for making alcohol. The early man must have eaten some berry, felt good, and he must have seeded the berry, and that's how the agriculture. So this is an unresolved question in Israel.
So in fact, I think, one is that in general in tropical countries like India and so on, right, the weather is not suitable for any kind of long-term fermentation. So you can't get the sophistication of a whiskey or any of those things without that aging process. And in India, there's no way for you to age anything for that long. The microbes will get to it well before anything remotely good happens, right? And it's not going to be. So in general, you can only, as he says, make tactical, short form, quick, something that can just give you a quick high. So a lot of the alcohol culture is largely amongst the subaltern communities. For them, the pain of agricultural labor and other things, so they need something to sort of keep them high. And that's, you see, the pan chewing, a lot of those things kind of come from those kind of stimulants, right? And depressants and so on. But what is also interesting is that if you read Perumal Murugan's Madurubagan, right? One part women, right? A side story in that entire background of that story is around the illicit brewing of country liquor. Okay? Because the main protagonists and others are all involved in illicit brewing of liquor from sugarcane, from any grain. So look, any grain, moment you add water and give it time, it will ferment. You'll get alcohol. There's no doubt about it, right? And every community, every culture always had that, particularly and then if you notice the sub-theme there, the British worked with the upper caste folks in that part of the world to make sure that every illicit brewing operation was shut down. because the British wanted exclusive control to sell their English-made liquor. And that was a part of colonialism, was basically to get people drunk and also sell all of these things, right? So it was a necessary part of it. So like this, I think in many parts of colonial world, you would have these traditional brewing cultures, subaltern brewing cultures being suppressed for such long, and the elites in society therefore being against that. So it will take some more cultural change for people to rediscover those things and start to, like he says, no, like the food of the subaltern communities is now already reached hipster status. The sourdough bread used to be the food of the peasants. Now it is eaten only by the rich, right? And so likewise, I think the same thing will happen to these things over the next 10, 20 years as we modernize.
So I have two questions. One is you mentioned about the food timings, right? We used to have only breakfast and dinner. So when did we reach this 3 meals and 1 snack kind of eating? Because these days everyone is craving about dieting, right? Intermittent fasting and all other things. So that's one question. Second is, as I and my friends age, we all realizing that milk is not working with us. The moment we had a coffee, the room is like a gas chamber. Sorry to say that. And we have found that in our family, our grandparents we used to mock them for these things. And now when you think, oh my God, this was happening. So we, being generally lactose intolerant, how does milk became such a prominent part of our culture?
I have a guess only, probably diurnal, discipline was introduced in our life by school system, factories, colonial officers. So through that we were forced to have 3 meals a day. This could be an intermediate phase when we are having, so much milk in the coffee and all that, because coffee came to Kerala probably only at the end of the 19th century. So at that time probably we didn't have milk. Probably we are copying it from the Tamil Brahmins probably.
Yes. Yeah, Katan Kabi and Katan Chaya was more common. Yeah. Yes.
Was more common. Actually, it was the national food of the CPM,
Yes.
Katan Chaya and Vada,
Yes.
All party officers used to serve it. So, so that could be, we probably thought, including that dabara, that special glass and the jar. These were all copied probably from Tamil Brahmins who were very prominent
Elites.
in
Yeah,
Kerala.
right, yes.
The Travancore bureaucracy was
entirely,
90%
yes.
Tamil Brahmins.
I am sure my great-grandparents were probably in that group.
Yes, yes. And probably the word Malayali was first used toward the end of the 80s when all other communities in Kerala, Nayars, Idava, Syrian Christians,
Right.
they wrote a memorial to the king to say that don't appoint the Tamil Brahmins, appoint us. And it was called Malayali Memorial.
I see.
So that could be the first historical use of the word Malayali. I mean, because only others can give you an identity and Tamil Brahmins probably gave us the identity.
True. So the interesting thing there is that, one, he mentioned Tamil Brahmins, right? A good chunk of Tamil Brahmins are less than 10 generations ago. They came from the north, they migrated. In fact, they call Vadama Ayers for that reason, right? They tended to be fairer skinned, and so therefore, lactose intolerance amongst Tamil Brahmins is lower than amongst people who have been living here for a longer time. So that is number one. And them introducing milk, filter coffee, drinking as a signaling of eliteness in society forced other people to start drinking more of those milky drinks. Historically, that was never the case. Second thing is that, remember, refrigeration arrived in India very late. Milk spoils in a few hours. For most of our history, milk is something you drink in a few hours after it got milk from the cow, especially in a weather like this, right? Like this weather. or it's spoiled, or you immediately ferment it and turn it into tair, more, and all of these other things, which last a few more days, right? And that as is low on lactose. So more drinking is a very common thing in the south because it is low on lactose. Milk drinking is very much, again, milk was not that easily available till Varghese Kurian, again a Malayali, who ended up making sure everybody in India suffered from lactose tolerance. You can blame a Malayali for that, right? You cannot believe by how much milk production increased in India as a result of Operation Flood. Because every Milma, Nandini, Avin, every state cooperative replicated that model. Because we have 1/3 of the world's cows. Most milk was actually largely going to waste. And also, even people in villages before your great-grandfather's generation, when do you get milk? Only when one of your cows is pregnant. Not all the time. So it is just that I think we now consume far more milk, and that is why you're seeing all of these uncomfortable gas chamber situations in your coffee shops here. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. You just told that till the 15th century there was no spices in Kerala.
No. Spices.
I thought sir said that. No, probably I heard it wrong.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because I heard it like that.
I think you mentioned something about before 15th century there was no, something about Vasco da Gama, I don't know what.
Oh, in 15th century, 1505, when Vasco da Gama came to Kochi for the first time, he went to Calicut, he came here first. The king of Cochin had an agreement with him, saying that Vasco da Gama and his crew will not buy or eat beef in
Yeah,
the street. That was all.
No, something before that, like a Greek traveler had written.
Oh, the Chinese.
Oh, the Chinese.
Mahua. Oh, two things.
Okay.
Yes.
Duck
Duck, no duck and
And-
no
donkeys.
donkeys.
Okay, sorry, I heard
that was
it
not
as
spices.
because
One thing there though is that now today I just had a Kandari fish curry,
yeah.
right? 150 years ago that didn't exist because the chilies were introduced much later,
Much later.
right? So the chili cultivation in agriculture is very new.
Yeah.
It came from Mexico via Portugal into India, very, very new. So that's why most of the new varieties of chili ended up coming to Kerala and Goa first,
Yeah.
and then spread to the rest of India. So your great-grandfathers less likely to have had chilies in his diet, or potatoes, or tomatoes, or carrot. Most of the vegetables in your avial, all English vegetables. So yeah.
So, but the other spices have existed.
Very
in
much,
Kerala.
absolutely. This is the only place where the spices grow.
I know.
Yeah, that's why. Because in
No,
my house
except,
we grow pepper.
Yeah.
Except pepper. Instead of pepper, we use what's called pipala, long pepper.
Long
Yeah,
pepper.
Tipili.
Tipil. That is for heat.
Yeah.
Long pepper is a hotter one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now it is only used in Ayurvedic medicine.
That's
It is not used
Now
in
we don't
cooking
use
anymore.
it.
Yeah.
So this, Malayalam lost one of the words also in this process. The potato came very late to Kerala.
Yes.
It was a delicacy for
Yeah.
our grandfather's generation.
Yes.
And in Kochi side, we used to call, in my childhood also, potato as alligator. Because allapad is the Dutch word for
Ah.
it. It came from that.
The
so
Dutch
that
word for
word
potato.
is that. Now we have taken it from Tamil, it became Urlakaranga.
Urlakkanai. Yes.
There's another thing is about the Calcutta biryani. Calcutta biryani comes with potato. in
Potato.
it.
Yes.
So now we make fun of it. What cheapos are there putting potato? Actually, the story is biryani probably in Calcutta was introduced by Wajid Ali.
Wajid Ali Shah. Yes.
So some historian had the curiosity to dig up the account books of the East India Company officials which are available in Indian office in Delhi, and found at that time meat was 1/4 the price of potato.
Wow.
So great Wajid Ali Shah wanted to give the best to his people and put potato in it.
Yes, but it actually soaks a lot of the meat juices, so it's very delicious actually. But one interesting thing, one observation about words he mentioned, right? So you know the Malayalam word for onion is ulli, right? Yeah, so he said something, he said sebola, right? Why are there two words? Because the ulli actually originally only refers to that small onion. That is the native onion. It is the Portuguese who introduced the big, giant onion. So the Malayalam word for that is the Portuguese word. The Portuguese word is cebola. The Spanish Portuguese word for is cebolla, cebola, right? And so savala, sabola is all from that. Whereas ulli actually refers to the. So you can actually sort of see, it's like how sugar comes from sharkara, which again comes from the Sanskrit sharkara, right? And jaggery comes from sharkara, again jagara, which comes from sharkara, which is the Malayalam word for jaggery. So both jaggery and sugar come from the same word. So it's the language actually you can trace how all of these words all go back, right? Yes. Yes, I think someone there, yeah. Here.
Yeah, I'll keep it very short. I think you're running out of time. So
Yes.
So being the Asian century, the next 25 years perhaps, do you see the likes of Paragon or let's say what do you call it, Sarvana Bhavan or any of these restaurants? I mean, we like KFC, we like McDonald's, but do you see like in the next 10 years where like foreigners prefer to eat at Sarvana Bhavan, not just Indians? I know. Yeah. I mean, I think you get my question, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. What are your thoughts? No. So in my opinion, I think one is that I think the fundamental difference between a KFC and a Paragon is that the food served at KFC is industrializable. No cooking actually happens in a KFC restaurant. You have to remember that. All the cooking happens somewhere in a giant factory. It's frozen. It comes there. It's deep fried. That's really just all that's happening. Frozen fries, frozen chicken, frozen everything, refrigerated vegetables, everything is already processed. It comes to the kitchen. Only process that's happening there is deep frying and heating. That's it. Okay. So that is how you run a industrial fast food restaurant where you can open a new branch, economically speaking, with a standard playbook, and you can hire people with no cooking skills. That's the only way that works. If you think that is doable with a kandari mean curry and a calicut biryani, it's very hard to do. It requires deep amounts of skill. So therefore, you necessarily cannot have 100 branches of Paragon, even just in Calicut. Because you will not find 100 chefs who can make it at that quality. Right? So I would say maybe at some point when cooking robots becomes a thing in the next 10 years, then maybe you can start to take Indian food into that large scale fast food level of scale. Till then, it will remain artisanal. It will remain something that is, you can only go to this one place to enjoy it. Yes. All right. And on that note, absolute pleasure, Mr. Madhavan. I absolutely enjoyed and hope all of you enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think cooking is all fun because we had to keep in mind what is 90% of cooking. 90% of cooking is done by that women in the house who had to, say, make 3 lunch boxes before 7 o'clock. And so the joy of cooking, we should take it up and share the burden.